and we just had to play it twice, didn't we? Welcome back to Arise Primetime. I'm Charles Anyegolu. So let's have further analysis now of the issues that have been raised in today's Primetime program, the devastating impact of the worsening security situation in Nigeria and the rising tensions that are forcing people into a siege mentality in their own country with new threats of terror every day. And as Nigerians continue to question the government's efforts to contain rising levels of insecurity in the country, a BBC documentary that investigates the so-called bandit warlords of Zamfara who've terrorized residents for years in the northwest has come under the radar of the government, with Nigeria's information minister accusing the documentary producers of glorifying terrorism and banditry. Well, to help us consider all this and more, I'm joined for the rest of the program by our analyst who will offer his perspective on the news and talking points of the day. Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi is a political affairs commentator, a Rise News analyst, and lecturer at Bayes University in Abuja. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Great to see you again. It's been a while. And you've sat there patiently, as you would, digesting everything that's been said. Let's start with the first issue of rising insecurity in the country, which the Brigadier General Sani Usman, former Nigerian spokesman, talked about. To what extent do you hold the current administration of President Buhari responsible for the deteriorating security situation in Nigeria and for the rising tensions in the country today?
Okay, very well, Charles, but I think it's okay for us to always put this in perspective. The problem of insecurity that we're having now did not just come overnight. It started over the condition, has been there over the years. It's just rearing its head now, and arguments have been made severally, around some of the problems that we are having around overpopulation, explosion in our numbers, around the proliferation of light and small weapons, and the failure of the security agencies to interdict them. The fact that we are borderless, our borders are very porous, there's free inflow of arms and ammunition. They are with less control, less apprehension. And of course the problem, long years of deindustrialization, the lack of attention to the forest, joblessness, the fact that all these factors, combine to produce a nihilist, people who don't have things to live for.
Well, it sounds overwhelming.
Yeah, but you see, this is a problem of governance and also a problem of government over the years. It's just rearing its head now. So there's a long-term cause of the problem, and of course there are also short-term causes. Short-term cause you'll see in the response of government in recent years as well, where so much have been budgeted for this to fight this insecurity. So much money has have been released, but of course you find it difficult to place your hand on the outcome of these expenditures. So it's a conflation of so many factors: overpopulation, then of course long years of proselytization, misunderstanding of religious beliefs, because these people are not true adherents of the faith that they claim to belong to. It's a conflation of factors, and it will take years for us to resolve it, to reverse the trend. And of course that's why we've been told as well that there are so many measures to it. It's not just about force, it's not just about the hard fact, not just about kinetic. It also involves the non-kinetic, such that you work towards de-radicalizing these fellows who have been proselytized, indoctrinated over the years. Because one of the most dangerous kind of war you can fight, one of the most difficult war to fight, is actually the ideological one. And if you look at how much money can you deploy into it in the first place that you think you'll be successful. If you buy a Tucano jet, for instance, and it crashes, like we have seen helicopters crashing in the northeast. You know how much it costs. I mean, crashing because you want to fight miscreants who are using motorcycles. So it's that's why the non-kinetic aspect also matter. And you can resolve these essentially through education. Maybe if not structural education, maybe some kind of momentary education. But the education does not necessarily have to be the Western education. Proper Islamic education, maybe proper Christian education, as the case could be. But letting these fellows understand, I beg your pardon, these fellows understand that there can be hope in life, that there can be something you can live for. Because it is because over the years they become nihilists because they don't feel a sense of tomorrow. And if you don't feel a sense of tomorrow, you just feel that why should another person around you feel
that's a very good analysis. Yeah. But the problem is that it's not just the militants and the bandits and the armed criminals. There is a tremendous level of frustration as a result of all the things you've enumerated, because all those things don't affect just the militants and the criminal gangs. It affects so many other people in Nigeria, and there's so many other different levels of crime that it's given fillip to.
But we also have to remember that there are different levels in which these things that we have talked about affect people.
But what I wanted to
levels
ask
of attention.
What I wanted to ask you is, if insecurity and poverty continue to worsen and to deepen, do you think that one day all the anger is going to, because we're seeing that anger, I mean, that's part of what you were talking about. Is it all going to boil over onto the streets because people simply can't take it anymore?
No, I don't think it will deteriorate. I don't think it will degenerate. You know the way terrorists work, they terrify, they instill fear. They want to cause commotion, capture our imagination in the negative, just the way they have done in the last few days around Abuja. And their tactics remain guerrilla, Scotch egg tactics, hit and run, and you begin to fear. Everybody begins to panic, and when that happens, they are happy. But of course, arguments have been made, and we have seen this in evidence that hardly can they confront the Nigerian army or the Nigerian military in a symmetrical warfare. That's why I say symmetrical. They come and go. They cannot confront the organized Nigerian army. For a long time to come, if nothing fundamental happens, it may just continue like this. But it can also be very distracting, for economic growth and development,
and destructive
for the peace of the city, and destructive for the peace of the citizenry. But I don't see it degenerating. I think, imagine if they couldn't overrun Maiduguri, for instance, despite all the damage they caused in the northeast. Of course, yes, they have been, they have made an impact in Kaduna State, but of course, there's still higher level of resistance coming from the Nigerian army. If against those backgrounds, you also assume, you can make that inference that their impact in Abuja will also be marginal.
We've got about 50 seconds, sadly, before we have to end the program. What do you think of the Nigerian government's decision to go after the BBC over that documentary it made about the bandit warlords of Zamfara?
No, I don't agree with it, and I agree absolutely with the arguments of the previous guest, group captain, that what they should do is rather to engage, because the media is a professional. I mean, they're simply being professional, and in being professional, sometimes you may go overboard. The obligation of the journalist is to break the story, to report it on YouTube.
So don't wave a big stick at journalists.
No, don't wave a big. If you do that, you are driving them to the cocoon, and they may come back to you in a way that you don't like. So engage them, build consensus, find peace. Let's have a common ground and talk about moderation. And of course, in talking to the journalists themselves, what you need is a better understanding of the circumstances in which we exist, and that circumstance can come through increased level of professionalism, which means that you should be circumspect in what you report and what you dispense to the audience.
Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi, absolute pleasure talking with you. He is, of course, Arise News analyst. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Primetime. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for all.